I can't resist.
I had 3 inviolable rules. 1. Never mix business with pleasure. 2. Never trust a charming man. 3. Never, under any circumstance, get involved with Damon Cross, your boss, who also happened to be the Mafia boss, owner of the most exclusive club in the city, and the most infuriatingly irresistible man I'd ever met. He'd been hitting on me for 3 years. I always said no, I promised myself, until the day he caught me on the phone, and everything fell apart.
Welcome to my library. I'm Lena, and our story is just beginning.
Chapter 1. The Promise and Getting Caught.
You were talking about me.
The Obsidian office was quiet that Thursday afternoon, and I took advantage of the peaceful moment to handle personal matters. I grabbed my cell and called Ivy, my best friend, and the only person in the world who knew exactly why I'd been keeping Damon Cross at a safe distance for 3 long years. Ivy, I already said no, I whispered irritably, checking the door to make sure no one was listening. The last thing I needed was someone from the club overhearing this conversation. But why? Her voice sounded exasperated on the other end of the line, as if we'd already argued about this 1,000 times before, and we had. The guy is gorgeous, rich, powerful, and completely obsessed with you. And my boss, I replied, organizing papers on the desk just to have something to focus on besides the growing frustration. An arrogant and a player. You know perfectly well why this is never going to happen, Ivy. There was a significant pause on the other end, and I already knew what was coming. Ivy had that irritating gift of reading between the lines of my most carefully constructed defenses. But you like him. Admit it. She practically sang the words, and I could imagine the smug smile on her face. You can't go 5 minutes without mentioning his name, Riley. I sighed, letting the pen drop on the desk harder than I intended. My heart raced because she was right, and we both knew it. Closing my eyes wasn't going to make the truth disappear. Okay, maybe I find him attractive, but that doesn't mean anything, I finally admitted, feeling the heat rise up my neck just from saying the words out loud. It doesn't change the fact that it would be the worst idea of my life. Attractive? Ivy practically screamed, and I pulled the phone away from my ear. Riley, you've been in love with him for... I'm not in love, I cut in quickly, too defensive to be convincing. I got up from my chair and started pacing around the office, as if the movement could dissipate the restlessness taking hold of me. He's gorgeous, infuriatingly irresistible, and even funny when he's not being an arrogant idiot. And he has that smile, that what? The deep, amused voice behind me made every muscle in my body freeze instantly. My blood turned to ice. My heart stopped, and time seemed to slow down in a cruel, cinematic way. No, this wasn't happening. I turned slowly, feeling my stomach sink with every inch of movement. Damon Cross was leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed, that wicked and absolutely devastating smile curving his lips. His dark eyes gleamed with dangerous amusement, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that he'd heard everything, every damn word. Ivy, I'll call you back, I managed to say, hanging up the phone with trembling fingers before she could say anything to make the situation even worse, because it could get worse. It definitely could get worse. Damon pushed off from the door and started walking toward me with that predatory confidence that made my heart race and my rationality beg for resignation. Each of his steps echoed in the tense silence of the office, and I gripped the edge of the desk just to have something solid to hold on to. No, go on, he said, stopping dangerously close. You were talking about my smile. I forced a neutral expression, desperately trying to regain some control over the situation that was clearly slipping through my fingers. Lying now would be useless, but admitting the truth? Unthinkable. I wasn't talking about you. The lie came out too weak to be convincing, and by the way his eyes narrowed with amusement, Damon knew exactly that. No, he tilted his head, taking another step that eliminated the safe space between us. Who else do you know who's gorgeous, funny, and has that smile? I swallowed hard, feeling the heat take over my face in a way that couldn't be hidden. My brain screamed for me to say something smart, some sharp response that would put distance between us again, but my mouth simply wouldn't cooperate. Lots of people. It was all I could say, and even to me it sounded ridiculous. Damon's eyes gleamed with silent victory as he took the final step that completely cornered me against the desk. His hands landed on either side of me on the wooden surface, trapping me without touching me, and I could feel the heat radiating from his body, the intensity of that dark gaze consuming me. Liar. The word came out low, almost a whisper, but loaded with an absolute certainty that made my stomach knot. I tried to move, create some space, but only managed to press myself harder against the desk. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it, and his proximity was destroying every defense I'd carefully built over the past 3 years. Damon, get out of the way. My voice came out weaker than I intended, with no real authority. Not until you repeat what you said. He leaned in slightly, and I could feel his breath brushing my face. His voice was low, dangerous, loaded with an intensity that made my skin tingle. I'm not going to. to, I started, but the words died when he moved even closer, eliminating the last remnant of personal space between us. Say it again. Each word was pronounced slowly, deliberately, while those dark eyes held me in place with a force that had nothing physical about it. I took a deep breath, trying to find oxygen in air that suddenly seemed too thin. I looked at him, at that ridiculously handsome face that kept me awake more nights than I'd ever admit, and felt my resolve waver dangerously. "You're too arrogant," I finally managed to say, putting as much firmness as I could gather into the words. The smile that curved his lips was devastating. Slow, confident, absolutely aware of the effect it had on me. "But irresistible, you just admitted." "I didn't admit anything," I protested, but my voice sounded much less convincing than I intended. "You said I'm gorgeous," he insisted, and there was a note of satisfaction in his voice that made me want to push him away and pull him close at the same time. "I said someone was gorgeous." I tried to defend myself, but I knew I was losing this battle miserably. "And also, funny," he added, clearly enjoying my discomfort. I gritted my teeth, frustrated with myself for putting myself in this situation. "You're not funny. You're irritating." The laugh that escaped him was low, guttural, the kind of sound that reverberated in his chest and did strange things to my ability to reason. "And yet you think about my smile." I finally managed to gather enough strength to push him, creating space to escape from the delicious and dangerous trap he'd put me in. I moved away quickly, putting the safe distance of a desk between us, my heart still racing and my breathing irregular. "This is workplace harassment," I accused, crossing my arms in a pathetic attempt to seem in control of the situation. Damon simply leaned back against the desk that had previously trapped me, completely relaxed, that irritating smile still playing on his lips. "It's mutual flirting. There's a difference." "It's not mutual," I insisted, even knowing I was blatantly lying. "Your red cheeks disagree," he observed with that infuriating amusement, and I touched my face instinctively, feeling the heat that confirmed his words. "I'm hot," I tried to justify, but even to me it sounded ridiculous. His eyes warmed in a way that made my stomach leap. "Me too, since you came into my life." The words hit me with unexpected force, and for a moment, just one treacherous moment, I wanted to believe them, wanted to believe this was real, that it wasn't just the challenge of conquering the only woman who told him no. But then reality came back, cold and relentless. I stopped at the door, turning to face him one last time. I needed to make this clear, put the boundaries back where they should be. "Damon, stop this." His expression changed instantly, the amusement giving way to something more serious, more intense. He straightened, and for the first time in that interaction, there wasn't a trace of playfulness on his face. "Why? Give me one real reason." The question caught me off guard with the raw honesty it carried. He wasn't apologizing, wasn't backing down. He was asking for the truth, and I, against all my better judgment, gave it to him. Because if I give in, I hesitated, the words stuck in my throat, fighting against years of carefully constructed defenses. I lose control of everything. Something passed across his face, something that looked dangerously close to genuine understanding. He took a step toward me, but stopped when he saw my defensive posture. "What if I promise you won't lose anything?" I smiled without humor, shaking my head slowly. "You can't promise that." I left the office before he could respond, before I could do something stupid like believe him. But it wasn't always like this. There was a time, 3 years ago, when everything was different, when I was just a nervous girl looking for stability, and Damon Cross was just the intimidating boss I was about to meet. I remember my first day at the Obsidian like it was yesterday. I arrived too early, sweaty hands clutching the folder with my resume, even knowing I was already hired. The club in daylight was different. Less glamorous and mysterious, more real and tangible. I needed that job. I needed the stability it promised after years of uncertainty. I was adjusting my blouse for the 3rd time when the deep voice made me turn. "You're the new secretary?" And there he was. Damon Cross at 32, already completely in control of the empire he'd inherited from his father. Impeccable suit, confident posture, and those dark eyes that seemed to see through every defense I had. He looked at me in a way that made my stomach turn. Not from fear, but from something much more dangerous. "Yes, Riley Bennett," I answered, forcing professionalism into my shaky voice. "Damon Cross, welcome." He extended his hand, and when our fingers touched, I felt an electric current run up my arm. His eyes traveled over my face with undisguised interest. "You're different from the others." I pulled my hand back too quickly to be casual, my self-preservation instinct already screaming warnings. "Thank you. Where's my desk?" He seemed surprised by my objectivity, but the smile that curved his lips was one of approval, straight to the point. I like that. There was a pause, and then, with that confidence of someone who'd never heard no, "Dinner with me later?" I didn't hesitate for a second. "No, thank you." The shock on his face would have been funny if I hadn't been so nervous. He blinked, as if he wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. No, I don't mix work with personal life, Mr. Cross. I kept my voice firm, professional, creating the first barrier between us. Call me Damon, he said, still processing the rejection. Mr. Cross is more appropriate. Excuse me. I walked past him without looking back, feeling his gaze burning into my back. I heard the low, incredulous laugh that escaped him, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Because even in that first moment, I knew Damon Cross was dangerous. Not in the obvious way his work suggested, but in the way that made my heart race and my caution waver, and so it began. 3 years of a careful dance between attraction and resistance. In the first year, Damon tried everything. Flowers arrived at my desk every Monday, always accompanied by witty cards that made me smile even when I didn't want to. I donated all of them to the nearest hospital. Gifts appeared on random dates, expensive and unnecessary things that I systematically returned. Invitations to dinners, events, even a weekend in Paris, all refused with increasingly automatic politeness. But something strange happened in the middle of all these refusals. We became friends, like for real. Our conversations during work hours became my favorite part of the day. He made me laugh with sarcastic observations about difficult clients, and I kept him grounded when business got tense. There was an ease between us that shouldn't exist, considering he clearly wanted more, and I constantly refused. The second year was harder. I saw Damon with other women, stunning blondes and sophisticated brunettes who arrived at the club hanging on his arm. Every time I saw it, something twisted inside my chest in a way I hated to admit, but I hid it well. I smiled professionally, treated everyone with courtesy, and died a little inside every time. And then, something changed. Damon started to realize I was different from the others, that I saw him, really saw him, beyond the power and money and dangerous reputation. And slowly, the other women disappeared. He stopped dating anyone. His focus narrowed, intensified, concentrated completely on me, and that scared me more than anything. Now, in the third year, the tension between us was almost unbearable. Everyone at the club knew. Bets were running on when I'd finally give in, because no one believed I'd keep resisting. But they didn't know the truth, didn't know why I had to resist, why letting Damon in would be the worst decision I could make. The bar was dark and cozy, the kind of place where Ivy worked serving drinks with the skill of someone who knew each customer by name. I was on my third glass of wine when she finally got a break, sliding onto the stool next to me with that look that said she wasn't going to leave me alone. "He cornered you!" Ivy practically screamed, her eyes wide with shock and amusement. "On the desk, Riley? The man is playing dirty, hands on both sides of the desk, looking at me like a predator analyzing prey," I recalled, feeling the heat rise up my neck just thinking about that moment. "Ivy, I almost died right there. And you?" She leaned in, eager. "What did you do?" "I ran. Like I always do," I admitted, drinking more wine than I intended. What else could I do? Stand there and let him make me admit things I can't feel? Ivy sighed, in that way that indicated she was about to scold me. "Riley, why do you keep running from him? The man is clearly crazy about you." I drank the rest of the wine, feeling the liquid burn down my throat as I gathered courage to admit the truth I could barely accept. Because if I don't run, I fall. And if I fall, what? She pressed, and I could feel the weight of her gaze. "I'm afraid of what's going to happen." The words came out in a whisper, loaded with all the terror I kept inside. "Ivy, he doesn't know who I really am. He doesn't know about my past. And when he finds out..." "Afraid of what? He clearly likes you." Ivy touched my hand, but I pulled it away. "He likes the idea of me, of the woman who always says no, the impossible conquest," I explained, bitterness bleeding into my voice. "I'm a challenge to him. Nothing more." "What if it's not just that?" she questioned gently, but I was already shaking my head. "I can't risk finding out, not after everything." I looked at her, letting a little of the pain leak through. "You know why, Ivy. You're the only one who knows." She nodded slowly, understanding and sadness mixed in her gaze, and we both fell silent, because some truths were too heavy to be said out loud. Meanwhile, in the Obsidian's private office, Damon poured whiskey into 2 crystal glasses, passing one to Marcus, his right-hand man, and only real friend. The frustration still burned under his skin, mixed with something more dangerous: intrigue, desire, determination. "Boss, Riley left you hanging again?" Marcus asked, accepting the glass with an understanding smile. "She didn't leave me hanging," Damon corrected, drinking the whiskey in one go. "She ran, like always," Marcus observed. 3 years, man. 3 years of you chasing after her. But today was different." Damon leaned back in his chair, that dangerous smile curving his lips. "How?" Marcus leaned in, interested. "She admitted it, even without meaning to. She admitted she finds me attractive." Damon savored the words as if they were victory. "And I'm going to use that against her." Marcus laughed, shaking his head. "You're terrible. You know that?" Actually, I'm a strategist. There's a difference, Damon corrected, but the smile didn't waver. Riley Bennett built walls around herself, but today I saw a crack, and I'm going to exploit it until I tear everything down. What if she really doesn't want anything to do with you? Marcus asked, more serious now. Damon was quiet for a moment, considering the possibility that terrified him more than any dangerous business deal. Then I'll find out why. Because something scares her, Marcus. It's not just stubbornness. It's real fear, and I need to find out what it is. Silence settled between them, filled only by the sound of ice clinking in empty glasses. Damon looked out the window at the lit city outside, and a single certainty burned in his chest. Riley Bennett was his. Always had been. He just needed to make her believe it too. Chapter 2. Games and Boundaries.
Give me 1 month.
I woke up Friday with the feeling that something was about to happen. 3 years working for Damon Cross taught me that when he got too quiet, he was planning something dangerous. And yesterday, after I ran out of his office like my dignity depended on it, the silence that followed was practically sinister. I arrived at the Obsidian at 8 in the morning carrying my coffee, and the pathetic illusion that maybe, just maybe, yesterday had been just another normal day. I pushed open my office door and froze so abruptly that hot coffee splashed on my hand. Son of a... It wasn't a bouquet. Calling it a bouquet would be like calling the Titanic a little boat. It was a floral invasion, a botanical attack, practically a declaration of war disguised as a garden. Red roses the size of my head, white lilies perfuming the entire floor, pink peonies that probably cost more than my monthly salary. My desk had literally disappeared under the vegetation. He's lost his mind, I muttered, looking for somewhere to put my coffee amid the floral massacre. Completely, irrevocably, lost his mind. I found the card hanging on a particularly ostentatious lily, that elegant handwriting I'd recognize even in my sleep. For the woman with the smile I can't get out of my head. I sighed so dramatically that 3 petals flew off. He doesn't give up. Is he a masochist or just incredibly stubborn? You like it? The hot coffee was saved by pure miracle and reflexes from someone who's worked 3 years expecting scares. I turned slowly, and there was the one responsible for the floral attack, leaning against the doorframe with that smile that should come with a danger warning. Damon Cross, impeccable in a dark gray suit that probably cost more than my car, watched me as if he'd just conquered enemy territory. Like it? I repeated, looking at him, and then at the jungle that used to be my desk. Damon, I can't even see my computer. There's an entire flower shop in here. You didn't answer the question. He pushed off from the door, walking toward me with that predatory confidence that made my nervous system panic. I'm going to donate them to the hospital, I responded automatically, already pulling out my phone. They'll think there was a wedding or a funeral. Like always, he stopped dangerously close, so close I could smell his cologne mixed with the flowers. But you read the card? I turned to face him, forcing my best professional expression, the one I normally use to deal with drunk and insistent clients. I did, and it's still inappropriate. And excessive. Seriously excessive. Damon leaned against my desk, or rather, against the mass of flowers that was my desk, making petals fall. Riley, we passed the point of appropriate about 2 years ago, and you deserve excessive. We haven't passed anything. You're the one who insists on crossing every imaginable line. I crossed my arms, creating a physical barrier since the emotional one was failing spectacularly. He tilted his head, that smile getting more dangerous. And you insist on pretending you don't like it when your cheeks turn red every time I get close. I touched my face instinctively and wanted to hang myself. It's hot in here. It's 59 degrees, he pointed out, and the contained laughter in his voice was infuriating. Early menopause? I tried. And even to me, it sounded ridiculous. The laugh that escaped him was rich, genuine, and did inconvenient things to my ability to reason. You're 28. Rare cases happen, I insisted, defending the indefensible. Riley, he leaned in, eliminating more space. You're a terrible liar, and you're terrible at accepting boundaries, I shot back, backing up until my back met the bookshelf. It's not stalking, it's... He paused theatrically, eyes gleaming with humor. Persistent courtship. I let out a laugh with no humor in it. Persistent courtship? That's basically a manual on how to get a restraining order. You've never asked for one, he observed, moving closer, and now I was definitely cornered between him and furniture. I'm still considering it. Liar. His smile was devastating. Something inside me snapped. 3 years building walls, and he climbed them with flowers and smiles and proximity that left me dizzy. Damon, my voice came out tired, real. Stop, please. The transformation was instantaneous and disturbing. All the amusement evaporated, replaced by genuine concern that completely disarmed me. He stepped back half a step, giving space. Are you okay? Really, I'm tired, I admitted, more honest than I intended. Tired of being your personal impossible conquest project. Project? The offense on his face would have been funny if my chest wasn't tight. Riley, you're not a project. You're... What? I cut in, 3 years of confusion bleeding into the question. The only woman who told you no so you got obsessed. A A challenge? A conquest to add to the collection? Damon closed the distance he'd created in 2 decisive steps, and before I could protest, his hand was on my face, thumb tracing my cheek with a gentleness that violently contrasted with the intensity in his dark eyes. You, he paused, as if choosing words carefully, voice low and dangerously sincere, are the only woman who's made me want something beyond one night, the only one who makes me want tomorrows. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear my own heart trying to escape from my chest. I took a deep breath, trying to find oxygen in air that was suddenly too thin. And when you get it, my voice came out small, vulnerable in a way I hated. When I'm no longer a challenge, you'll get bored. How can you be so sure? He questioned. And there was something broken in the question. Because I know how men like you work. I forced firmness even when everything inside me wavered. Charming. Powerful, used to getting everything. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I don't want to be just another conquest for you to forget the next week. His hand slid from my face to my chin, forcing me to look directly into those eyes that haunted me awake and asleep. You, each word came out slow, deliberate, loaded with promise. Would never be just another one. I turned my face away, creating distance because I was dangerously close to believing. My heart was beating so hard it physically hurt. You can't guarantee that. He was quiet for an eternal moment, studying me in a way that made me feel exposed to the bone. Then, as if he'd made a monumental decision, he spoke. Then let me prove it. I looked at him, suspicious. How exactly do you plan to prove that? More flowers? A band? Skywriting? The smile that curved his lips was slow, dangerous. Give me a month. A month of what? You officially stalking me instead of unofficially. Of letting me court you for real, without you running like a scared rabbit every time I get close. He explained, and there was sincerity and hope mixed in. If at the end you genuinely don't feel anything, I stop. Completely. My brain screamed trap in neon capital letters, but my traitorous mouth asked another question. And if I do feel something? His smile was absolutely predatory. Then we decide together what to do about it. This is insane, I murmured, but I was already considering it and we both knew it. Are you afraid of finding out you feel something? He leaned in, reading every micro-expression. Or afraid of finding out how much you feel? The provocation poked my pride exactly where he intended. I lifted my chin, defensive. I'm not afraid of anything, then accept. Damn him for knowing me too well. Damn him for using my pride against me. 1 month, I gave in, seeing the instant triumph in his eyes. I raised a finger before he could celebrate, but with non-negotiable rules. His expression became cautious but interested. What rules? 0 emotional or physical pressure, 0 touches that cross the professional line, and 0, absolutely 0 jealousy if I decide to go out with other men. I watched each word cause impact. The first 2 items he accepted with relative calm, but the last one? His jaw locked so visibly I could see the muscle pulsing. You're going out with others? The question came out too casual to be really casual, voice carefully controlled, but something dangerous gleaming in his eyes. A petty and totally immature satisfaction filled me. 2 could play the game of making each other uncomfortable. Maybe, maybe not. Point is, you can't make a scene if I am. The silence stretched, tense as a violin string about to break. Finally, he nodded, stiff. I accept your rules. Seriously? I couldn't hide my surprise. The smile that emerged was absolutely dangerous, loaded with confidence that should worry me. Yes, but I also have one non-negotiable rule. I should have anticipated this. Of course, he'd have a counterpart, which is brutal and complete honesty. He moved closer again, invading my personal space with irritating ease. If you feel something, anything, you admit it. No running, no lying, no hiding. It was fair, infuriatingly. Impossible to argue. Fair, and probably impossible for someone who'd spent 3 years running from feelings. Okay, I accept. I extended my hand formally, as if we were closing a corporate merger, and not an agreement that would probably destroy all my defenses. Damon looked at my hand and laughed. Genuinely amused sound. So formal. But he shook it anyway, fingers wrapping around mine, and the electric current that passed through my arm should be studied by science. He didn't let go immediately, thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand in a way that definitely violated the appropriate touches rule. We start today. Loaded pause. Lunch with me? I hesitated exactly 2 seconds before giving in. Okay, but casual restaurant nearby. Nothing with menus without prices. Done. He finally released my hand, fingers sliding over mine too slowly to be accidental. The Italian restaurant on the corner from the Obsidian was everything fancy places weren't. Worn wooden tables, red and white checkered tablecloths, wonderful smell of garlic and basil floating in the air, along with lively conversations in Italian. It was my kind of place. And seeing Damon Cross, exclusive club owner and Mafia boss, sitting in a slightly crooked chair under natural window light was surreal. You look out of place, I observed, accepting the laminated menu, like a wolf in a hen house, or more precisely like a man in a $3,000 suit in a $20 restaurant. He looked around. genuinely considering. Actually, it's nice. Real. Real? I raised an eyebrow. As opposed to your exclusive club with champagne that costs more than monthly rent? As opposed to having to always be on guard, he corrected, surprising me with honesty. Here, nobody wants anything from me. Something softened in my chest, dangerously close to tenderness. Welcome to the world of common mortals. The waiter came, took orders in rapid Italian that Damon responded to fluently, surprising me again. When we were alone, he leaned back, studying me. So, tell me something I don't know about you. You know everything relevant. I tried to deflect. I don't know anything really personal, he insisted, gentleness in his voice catching me off guard. Family, past, what makes you, you. The tension was immediate and probably visible because I saw his expression soften even more, but I'd promised honesty. As far as I could manage. There's not much to tell. Parents divorced when I was 12. My mom lives in another state now. My dad, familiar lump in my throat. Haven't talked to him in years. Why not? Gentle, no pressure. Complicated and painful. I took a deep breath. And you? Classic Mafia family with tense dinners and questionable loyalties? He accepted the subject change without forcing, which I was grateful for. Kind of. My dad trained me since childhood to take over. My younger brother died 10 years ago in a deal that went wrong. My mother fled to Italy after and never came back. The pain in his voice when he mentioned his brother made my chest ache painfully. Without thinking, I extended my hand across the table, touching his. I'm sorry, really, thank you. He turned his palm, intertwining our fingers briefly before I pulled back. Heart racing. He was 23. I was 25 and should have protected him better. It wasn't your fault, I said firmly, surprised by the intensity of the conviction. He looked at me, something vulnerable in his eyes. Did you always want to work in a nightclub, or was it circumstance? Circumstance and desperation, I admitted. I needed financial stability urgently, and the Obsidian paid well. And now? Is it still just about money? The question caught me off guard with its sincerity. I looked at him, at that face that haunted my thoughts awake and asleep, and risked the truth. No, now I like the work, the people I met. I gathered a ridiculous amount of courage. The irritating boss who insists on pursuing me. The smile that exploded on his face was so genuine, so beautiful and devastating that my heart literally failed. You admitted it. I admitted you're irritating. Not that I like you. I tried to correct, but I was smiling too. Completely technical and irrelevant details. And then we were laughing, really laughing together. And it was easy and natural and frighteningly perfect. There, in that cheap restaurant with sunlight painting patterns on the table between us, I let the walls crack a little more. We returned to the Obsidian in the middle of the afternoon, and I was genuinely relaxed for the first time in days when a sharp and familiar voice echoed. Damon, darling. Precisely the person I was looking for. Carla Hartford emerged from the elevator as if the Milan runway had been transported to our lobby. All strategic curves poured into a red dress that clearly cost more than my car. The smile she directed at Damon was pure predator analyzing prey. And the look she shot me was so cold it nearly caused hypothermia. I felt Damon tense beside me, posture shifting subtly to something more defensive. Carla, his voice came out professional, almost cold. She practically purred, approaching with a sway that defied the laws of physics and gravity. We need to talk about the contract, darling. It's urgent. Schedule a meeting with Riley, he responded, not moving an inch toward her. Carla practically ground her teeth under her plasticized smile. Your secretary? I thought we could talk in a more private way. Perhaps over dinner. Something hot. Jealous and totally irrational twisted violently in my stomach. I kept my expression neutral with superhuman effort. Riley manages my schedule completely. Talk to her, he repeated, firmness leaving no room for interpretation. Carla finally looked at me directly, and the smile that curved her perfectly painted lips was pure distilled fakeness. Of course. So, secretary, can you fit your boss in tomorrow? Say, 8 at night? I'll check availability. I responded with glacial professionalism, mentally crossing out the entire week as inexplicably busy. Carla finally left, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and obvious intentions. I waited for her to disappear completely before turning to Damon. She clearly wants more than business discussion, I observed, trying to sound casual and probably failing. Damon looked at me, and the intensity in his eyes made my stomach do a somersault. I know, I'm not interested in the slightest. Why not? I asked before I could censor myself. She's beautiful, successful, rich. He took a step toward me, eliminating the space between us. She's not you. My heart stopped, literally stopped, forgot how to function, and then restarted in completely chaotic rhythm. That, you can't just say those things. Why not? Even closer. Because it makes me, I caught myself too late, want to believe it's real. His hand came up, fingers tracing my cheek with gentleness that contrasted with the intensity in his gaze. Then believe it, Riley. For the first time, just believe. It's not that simple. It can be exactly as simple as you allow it to be. The moment stretched between us, loaded with electric tension and dangerous possibilities. I could feel his breath, warm on my face, could see every detail of those dark eyes, could feel his heat enveloping me. My heart beat so out of control I was dizzy. For one traitorous and wonderful second, I wanted to believe, wanted to let the walls fall, wanted to fall. Boss, Julian's here, says it's urgent. Marcus appeared like a physical manifestation of terrible timing, and I stepped back so abruptly I almost tripped over my own feet. Damon closed his eyes briefly, frustration so visceral it was almost palpable. Perfect timing as always, he murmured, clearly not for Marcus to hear. Louder, I'll be right there. He looked at me, promise in his eyes. We finished this conversation later, for real. Okay? It was all I could manage, voice coming out more affected than I intended. My office was empty when I returned, flowers still dominating every surface like a physical reminder of everything that happened. I sank into my chair, letting my head fall into my hands. 1 month. You can survive 1 month without falling completely. You can. I tried to convince myself out loud, but even to me it sounded desperately unconvincing, because the truth, the terrifying truth I could no longer deny even to myself, was that my heart was already screaming no, that 1 month would be more than enough for me to lose myself irrevocably, that maybe, probably, certainly, I was already falling. And the fall promised to be spectacular and catastrophic. Chapter 3. The Courtship.
This feels dangerous.
Monday arrived with the inevitability of income tax and moral hangover. I arrived at the office prepared for flowers, declarations, or any other manifestation of Damon Cross's Convince Riley in 30 Days campaign. What I didn't expect was to find a complete gourmet coffee setup on my desk, not a simple coffee, an entire setup with my exact Starbucks order, chocolate croissant still warm, and a note. Day 130. Good morning, Riley. You drink black coffee with an extra shot, no sugar, because you're a masochist. D. I picked up the cup, inhaling the perfect aroma, and hated how my heart melted a little. He remembers my order, I murmured, taking a sip. Of course he remembers. He probably has a complete file on me in some secret archive. Actually, I just pay attention. I almost spit out coffee for the second time that week. Damon was at the door, casually leaning as if that were his default pose, navy blue suit doing unfair things to my hormones. You need to wear a bell, I accused, wiping up the coffee that splashed. Or announce when you're going to show up. Give a trumpet blast, something. He laughed, entering without invitation, because apparently boundaries were suggestions. Where would the fun be in that? I love when you get startled and make that face. What face? I asked defensively, even knowing exactly what face. Like Bambi staring at truck headlights, he demonstrated, widening his eyes in an absolutely ridiculous way. I couldn't help it. I laughed, out loud. Did you just compare my surprised expression to a deer about to become roadkill? Very cute deer about to become roadkill, he offered, smiling in that way that made my stomach flip. That doesn't make it better, but I was smiling too, and we both knew he'd won that round. Damon approached, grabbing the other coffee I hadn't even noticed on the desk. Brought one for myself too. Thought I'd have breakfast with you before meetings. And so it began. Breakfast Monday. Tuesday he showed up with homemade muffins that the cook made extras of. Wednesday was green smoothie because you need vitamins. Thursday, bagels with cream cheese. Friday, pancakes in a thermal container with syrup separate. Are you trying to fatten me up? I asked on Friday, staring at the perfect pancakes. I'm trying to make sure you eat like a functional human being, he corrected, sitting on the edge of my desk with irritating familiarity. I eat. Coffee and anxiety don't count as a food group. I touched my chest theatrically. Rude. True, but rude. Lunches became routine too. Casual restaurants always, because Damon learned quickly that I hated pretentious places. Monday was Mexican, where he watched me eat tacos with not very elegant enthusiasm. Tuesday was burgers, where we discussed terrible movies we secretly loved. Wednesday was Thai food so spicy that we both cried and laughed simultaneously. Are you okay? I managed to ask between tears and laughter, seeing Damon red-faced and visibly suffering. Perfectly. Fine, he gasped, drinking water desperately. This is delicious, if we ignore that my mouth is on fire. I warned you it was extra spicy. I thought you were exaggerating. More water. You weren't exaggerating. I never exaggerate about spicy food. It's a matter of honor. Thursday was Italian again. Our place. And Friday. Damon simply asked, "What do you want to eat today?" The question caught me completely off guard. You're letting me choose? It's always been you choosing, he pointed out, genuine confusion on his face. I just suggested and waited for you to approve or veto. Something warm and dangerous bloomed in my chest. He had been paying attention. Real, genuine attention. Not just to what I said, but to what I didn't say too. Sushi, I decided, testing. There's this tiny place nobody knows about near the harbor. Perfect. No hesitation. Let's go. And it was perfect. He ate too much wasabi trying to impress and turned red again. I laughed so hard I cried. He stole my last sashimi, and I retaliated by stealing his sake. It was easy, dangerously, frighteningly easy. But of course the universe wasn't going to let things just be easy. Damon. Carla Hartford appeared in the hallway. Tuesday afternoon like a physical manifestation of bad timing and too expensive perfume. Emerald green dress, strategic neckline, smile that promised things that definitely weren't about business. Still haven't scheduled our dinner? She practically purred, touching his arm in an absolutely unnecessary way. I was 10 feet away organizing files, definitely not listening, definitely not getting irrationally irritated by perfectly manicured hands on his arm. Like I said, talk to Riley about my schedule. Damon removed his arm subtly but firmly. But darling, this is something delicate that perhaps needs to be discussed in a more private environment. Her tone left absolutely clear that private came with insinuations, something green and ugly twisted in my stomach. Jealousy. Ridiculous. Irrational. Intense jealousy. I don't mix business with... Damon paused, looking directly at Carla. Wrong intentions. Her face turned red under the impeccable makeup. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you know perfectly well, he said calmly, but there was steel in his voice. If it's about the contract, schedule with Riley. If it's about anything else, I'm not interested. Carla looked at me then, pure venom in her eyes. I see. You're busy with other distractions. Riley is not a distraction. Damon's voice became dangerously low, and I strongly suggest you be more careful with your words. She left furiously in heels that cracked like gunshots. Silence filled the hallway. Slowly, I turned to find Damon watching me. You didn't have to do that, I said, even though I was grateful he had. Yes, I did. He approached. And I want you to know, you're not a distraction, Riley. You're the most important person in my life right now. My heart simply stopped functioning properly. Damon, I know you're still deciding about me, about us, but while you decide, I want you to be absolutely certain there's no one else. I don't want anyone else. I swallowed hard, without words for the first time in days. Friday night arrived with that specific exhaustion of a productive week. Everyone had left, but I was still in the office organizing proposals for Monday. It was almost 10 when I heard footsteps. You're still here? Damon appeared carrying a box that smelled like heaven. Riley, it's 10 at night. I'm just finishing, I started, but my stomach growled, betraying my hunger. He lifted the box, soft smile on his face. Pizza. Margarita, your favorite. You forget to eat when you're focused. How did he know this? How did he pay attention to such small but significant details? You brought pizza, I repeated in mild shock, and soda and napkins and even paper plates because I know you hate eating straight from the box. Something inside me melted completely. You're insistent, irritating, charming, he offered, already opening the box on the small table. Surprisingly thoughtful, I admitted, taking the slice he offered. We sat on the floor because the chairs were uncomfortable for eating pizza casually. He took off his jacket, loosened his tie, and suddenly looked less intimidating Mafia boss and more human, real. Tell me something embarrassing about yourself, I asked impulsively. He almost choked on his pizza. What? Everyone has embarrassing stories. I want to hear one of yours, Damon thought, a smile forming slowly. Okay, when I was 15, I tried to impress a girl by reciting Shakespeare, only I memorized the wrong play. No. I started laughing in anticipation. Yes, I recited a monologue about death and despair when it should have been about love. I exploded in laughter. You didn't? I did. She ran off thinking I was a psychopath. He was laughing too now. I spent an entire month being avoided at school. I couldn't stop laughing. The best thing I've heard all year. Your turn, he demanded. Maximum embarrassment, I thought. Courage gathered. First time I drank too much in college, I tried to sing Britney Spears at karaoke. That's not so bad. I threw up in the middle of Toxic. His face was a spectacle. Horror. Amusement. Shock mixed together. Then he collapsed in laughter, that rich and genuine sound that rarely emerged. On stage? He managed to ask. In front of 200 people. I covered my face. Never went back to that bar. We laughed until tears ran down our faces. Pizza was forgotten. Guards were lowered. And in the middle of that mess of pizza boxes and embarrassing stories, something changed. It became more real, more intimate. The laughter died down until comfortable silence filled the space. I looked at him, at that face that had become so familiar, and found Damon already looking at me. The intensity in his dark eyes stole my breath. Riley, he began, leaning in slightly. My heart raced. He was too close, looking at my lips, and I knew, absolutely knew what was going to happen. And for one terrifying second, I wanted it. Wanted it so badly it physically hurt. But then reality hit. Too fast. Too soon. Too scary. I pulled back so abruptly I almost knocked over the soda. I need to go. It's late. The disappointment on his face was visceral. Riley, thanks for the pizza. I grabbed my purse with uncoordinated movements. See you Monday. I left before he could respond, before I could change my mind, before I could do something stupid like stay. In the car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, I took a deep breath. Week 1 complete, I murmured to the emptiness. 3 to go. You're completely screwed. Because if 1 week had left me like this, laughing at silly stories, Eating pizza on the floor, almost kissing him. What would 3 weeks do? The answer terrified me. Chapter 4. Jealousy and Truths.
Tell me the truth.
Week 2 started with a stupid and impulsive decision. Seeing a message from Daniel, a college friend who had just moved back to the city, should have given me pause. Accepting to go out to dinner with him? That's where the stupidity came in. It's just dinner, I told Ivy on the phone Tuesday morning, already regretting it. We've been friends for years. You're testing Damon, Ivy accused with that irritating perception. You want to see if he really respects the rules. I'm not testing anyone, I lied shamelessly. Daniel is a friend. Friends have dinner together. It's completely innocent and normal. Uh-huh. And have you told Damon yet? Guilty silence. Riley, I don't need to ask permission. He agreed to the rules, I defended, even knowing I was being childish. Zero jealousy, remember? You're going to cause an international incident, Ivy predicted ominously, or at least an incident involving a Mafia boss having a breakdown. He'll be fine, I insisted, ignoring the growing nervousness in my stomach. Spoiler, he definitely was not fine. Wednesday night, moderately fancy French restaurant. I was talking with Daniel about old times when I felt it. That sensation of being watched, specifically by intense dark eyes I'd learned to recognize even in my sleep. I turned my head slowly, half expecting, half dreading. And there, 3 tables ahead, was Damon Cross, alone, black suit, jaw locked so tight I could see it from where I sat, eyes fixed on me with intensity that should come with a danger warning. Shit, I murmured. What? Daniel followed my gaze. Girl, that guy is looking at you like a possessive owner analyzing a threat to his property, I completed, watching Damon stand up. Yeah, that would be my boss. Your boss looks like he's about to commit murder. Excellent perception. Damon crossed the restaurant with that predatory walk that made waiters instinctively move aside. He stopped beside our table, polite smile that didn't come close to reaching his eyes. Riley, what an unexpected coincidence. His voice came out too controlled. Dangerous. Damon, I forced casualness. Is this a coincidence or are you following me? I have dinner here every Wednesday. Blatant lie. You know that. I didn't. He'd never mentioned it. He was definitely lying. Daniel, brave or suicidal, extended his hand. Daniel Martinez, Riley's college friend. Damon looked at the hand like it was a venomous snake before shaking it. Grip clearly harder than necessary by the way Daniel flinched. Damon Cross, Riley's employer. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a dull knife. We need to talk, Damon said, finally, looking only at me. Now, I'm busy, I responded, even as my heart raced dangerously. Having dinner with a friend. Riley, just my name, but loaded with warning. You know, Daniel stood up, clearly reading the room. I just remembered I have a thing in the morning, early. He looked at me apologetically. We'll talk later. Daniel, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Good night. He practically ran, leaving me alone with Hurricane Damon, who immediately took the vacant seat, staring at me with intensity that made my breathing fail. You're jealous, I accused, because offense was the best defense. Obviously, I'm jealous, he exploded, control finally breaking. You're having dinner with another man. A friend, I corrected, even as part of me was secretly satisfied with the reaction. Daniel is a friend who was looking at you like he wanted to be much more than that. You're being ridiculous. I'm being honest. Damon leaned in, invading my space across the table. You're mine, Riley. Something hot and rebellious exploded in my chest. I'm not anyone's, especially not yours. Not technically yet, but emotionally, you already are, and we both know it. The words hit me like a physical punch, because he was right. Damn him, but he was right. You agreed to the rules, I reminded, voice weaker than I intended. Zero jealousy. I agreed, before I understood that seeing you with another man literally kills me inside. He admitted, raw and vulnerable. Sorry for not being superhuman, Riley. Silence fell between us, loaded with everything we weren't saying. The restaurant continued around us, but it could have been just the two of us in the universe. Why are you here? I finally asked. Softer. Really, because the idea of you with someone else makes me crazy. Brutal honesty in his eyes. Because in 2 weeks, you've become the most important thing in my life. And because I'm terrified I'm going to ruin this by being exactly what I'm being right now. Possessive and irrational. My heart melted completely. Damon, come with me. He extended his hand. Please, just come. I should have said no. Should have maintained boundaries. But I put my hand in his, and he pulled me out of the restaurant before I could rethink it. Where are we going? I asked 15 minutes later, when Damon's car stopped in front of a luxurious residential building. My place. He got out, opening my door. I want to show you something. Nerves danced in my stomach as I followed him. Private elevator went straight up to the penthouse. When the doors opened, my breath caught. The apartment was not what I expected. Yes, it was luxurious, but also personal. Photos on the wall, books everywhere, comfortable mess of someone who actually lived there. You're the first person I've brought here, Damon said behind me, besides Marcus and my mother. I turned, surprised. Why? Because this is my real space. Not the image, not the character. just me. He walked to the huge window with a view of the city. And I want you to know the real me. All of me. Something tightened in my chest as I approached. We stood side by side, looking at the city lights. Comfortable silence between us. I've never wanted anyone the way I want you, he confessed softly, still looking ahead. Never felt this. This need to be better, to be worthy. Damon, you're a mafia boss, a criminal, a dangerous man. He finally looked at me. I'm not good, Riley, but with you, I want to be. Tears burned unexpectedly. I'm afraid. Of what? He turned completely, hands on my shoulders. Of ruining everything, I admitted, voice breaking. Of you finding out who I really am and what? Changing my mind? He held my face, forcing me to look into those eyes. Riley, it doesn't matter what you think you need to tell me. It won't change how I feel. You can't know that. Yes, I can, because I've already spent 2 weeks getting to know you, the real you, and I'm more in love now than I was the first day. The world stopped. You, what? Panic crossed his face as he realized what he'd said. Shit, that's not how I meant to. Too soon. But I wasn't running. For the first time, I wasn't running. My heart beat out of control. My entire body trembled, and before I could think better of it, I leaned forward. The distance between us shrank, breaths mixed, lips inches from each other. I could feel his heat, see every detail of those dark eyes wide with surprise and hope. And then reality hit me like a brick. The past, the secret, everything he didn't know. I pulled back so abruptly I almost tripped, hands shaking. I can't. Not yet. Riley, he took a step toward me, but stopped when he saw my panic. You said you're in love, but you don't know about me. You don't know about my past, what happened. And when you find out, the words came out in a desperate torrent. When you find out, you'll understand why I can't do this yet. Then tell me, he begged, vulnerable in a way that broke my heart. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. I shook my head, tears finally escaping. I'm not ready. I want to be, but I'm not. Painful silence filled the space between us. Finally, Damon nodded slowly. Okay, when you're ready, I'll be here. No matter what it is, Riley, we'll deal with it together. But the promise, as sincere as it was, couldn't erase the fear consuming me. Because when he found out the truth, when he knew I'd worked at the Obsidian 10 years ago, that I'd been fired for causing trouble, that I'd seen him turn his back when I needed help, how could he forgive me for hiding all of this? I need to go, I whispered, already backing toward the door. Sorry, I just need to go. This time he didn't try to stop me. He just stood there near the window, silhouette cut out against the city lights, and the look of pain on his face haunted me the entire way home. 40 minutes later, I was on the phone with Ivy, voice broken between sobs. I'm in love with him, Ivy. I finally admitted, words I'd denied for weeks. Completely, irrevocably in love. Finally, you admit it, but her voice was gentle, without judgment. But I can't get involved because of the past. Reality crushed the moment. When he finds out I worked there before, that I was fired, that he was there and did nothing, you need to tell him, Riley, Ivy said seriously. He deserves to know, especially now that he's admitted he loves you. I know. Small voice. Scared. Just not yet. Please just let me have this a little longer before everything explodes. Silence on the other end, loaded with concern. Okay, but soon, Riley. Secrets like this destroy relationships before they even begin. I know, I whispered, looking at the dark ceiling of my bedroom. Believe me, I know. Because the truth was that each day that passed without telling made the secret bigger, heavier, more impossible. And when it finally exploded, not if, but when, the destruction would be absolute. I just hoped I'd have the courage to tell him before it was too late. Chapter 5. The Secret Revealed.
I should have protected you.
Monday morning, and Damon Cross was having a surprisingly good day. Riley had sent a good morning text for the first time spontaneously. Marcus had brought donuts, and no deals had exploded in flames yet. Clearly the universe was compensating for something. Boss, you're smiling at your phone like a lovesick teenager, Marcus observed, biting into a chocolate-covered donut. It's disturbing. Riley sent me a picture of her coffee. Damon showed the screen like it was a work of art. See? She drew a smiley face in the foam. That's... Marcus paused, searching for words. Pathetic? Cute. Pathetically cute? It's perfect, Damon corrected, still looking at the photo like a complete idiot. You're gone, man. Like, shipwrecked without a life preserver gone. Completely. Damon agreed cheerfully, without any regret. Marcus shook his head, amused. Never thought I'd see the day. The great Damon Cross, feared boss, melting over a coffee photo. Riley isn't just anyone, Damon defended, finally putting away his phone. She's the woman of your life. Yes. You've established that about 500 times. Marcus finished for him. When are you going to tell her officially? I already did, Damon admitted, something vulnerable crossing his face. Last night, like, it slipped out accidentally, and she almost kissed me and then ran off terrified. Classic Riley. Exactly. Frustrated sigh. But she'll come around. Just needs time to process. Boss, I really hope so, because you've become an unbearably optimistic person and you're scaring everyone. Damon threw a napkin at him, laughing. Get back to work. Marcus left still laughing, leaving Damon alone in the office. He decided to use the positive energy for something productive, organizing the dead files that had been gathering dust for years in the cabinet. Mindless administrative work he'd normally delegate, but today he needed distraction before he started sending more pathetic messages to Riley. He opened the old cabinet in the corner, coughing at the dust that emerged. Dusty folders, old records, employee history. He started sorting methodically, throwing away what was irrelevant, organizing the rest. That's when he saw it. Folder marked Employees. 10 years ago. Simple curiosity made him open it. Old ID photos, faces he didn't recognize, forgotten names of people who worked at the club when he'd just taken over and his father still controlled everything with an iron fist. He flipped through absently, half paying attention, until the photo that made his world stop completely. Young girl. 16, maybe 17 years old. Obsidian waitress uniform. Shorter hair, younger face, but those eyes. He'd recognize those eyes anywhere. At any time. Name on the tag, Riley Bennett. The air was sucked from his lungs. His hands trembled, holding the photo, brain trying to process information that didn't make sense. Riley worked here, 10 years ago, when he was 25 and was gradually taking control from his father. She was 17 and a waitress. And he didn't remember her, didn't remember anything. With his heart racing dangerously, Damon continued reading the file. Employment status, dates, notes, and then he saw it. Terminated after incident with VIP client. Complaint filed without processing. Official reason. Inappropriate behavior. Blood turned to ice in his veins. Hands shaking even more. He searched for more details. Reports. Anything. He found a handwritten note in his father's handwriting. Girl caused scene with important investor. Client complained about inappropriate advances from her. Immediate termination. Do not process employee complaint. We prioritize relationship with client. Horror. Absolute and visceral, hit him like a physical punch, the pieces fitting together in a sickening way. VIP client, young girl, inappropriate behavior, cowardly code for harassment that was blamed on the victim. And Riley had been that girl. Foggy memories started to emerge. He vaguely remembered confusion one night, his father dealing with an employee situation. But Damon was so focused on learning the business, so still under his father's control, that he hadn't questioned it. He'd let his father decide. He'd let it happen. No, he murmured, reading and rereading the report as if the words would change, but they didn't. The truth remained, cold and horrible. Riley had been harassed, fired, blamed, and he'd been there and done nothing. That's why she never wanted to get involved. That's why the fear in her eyes. That's why the constant hesitation. She hated him, and she had every right. The phone fell from his trembling hands. Nausea churned in his stomach. How had he not seen it? How had he not realized? Because you were blind, idiot. Because she hid it well. Because you never imagined. He needed to talk to her. Immediately. Before he lost his courage. Before rationalization convinced him that maybe it was different from what it seemed. But deep down, he knew. He knew exactly what had happened. And he knew he'd completely failed the woman he loved. 10 years before he even really knew her. He found Riley in her office. Afternoon already falling. She was focused on the computer, oblivious to the disaster walking in her direction. When he entered, she looked up with a smile that died instantly when she saw his expression. Riley, we need to talk. The words came out grave, loaded with weight. Her face paled. Slowly, very slowly, she closed the laptop. You found out. It wasn't a question. It was a defeated statement. Why didn't you tell me? Damon managed to ask, voice breaking on the last word. Riley stood up. Defensive posture. Arms crossed like a shield. Tell you what exactly, Damon? That I worked here 10 years ago as a teenage waitress? That I was harassed by a drunk client your father considered more valuable than a 17-year-old employee? That I was fired and blamed for inappropriate behavior when the only crime I committed was defending my own dignity? Each word was like a blade, cutting deeper. Riley, I didn't know. You were there, she exploded. Tears already shining in her eyes. You were the owner's son. I saw you that night when security escorted me out, and you did nothing. I was 25 years old, Damon defended desperately, knowing he sounded pathetic. My father controlled everything. I had no real power yet. I was learning, obeying, but you had a voice. The tears flowed freely now. You could have said something, could have asked what really happened. But you stayed silent while I was humiliated and blamed for being a victim. Damon took a step toward her. Hands extended in plea. I don't specifically remember you. There were hundreds of employees. My father managed everything and I trusted him blindly. But I remember you, Riley sobbed, voice breaking completely. I remember looking at you, silently begging for help, for someone to believe me. And you just turned your back and let it happen. The pain in her voice destroyed him. Damon felt his own tears burn. Riley, I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I was young, stupid, a coward. And now, she challenged, wiping tears furiously. Now what are you? Different? Yes, the word came out with desperate force. I am different. When my father died, I changed everything in this club. Zero tolerance for harassment, real protection for employees, fair processes. I learned, Riley. I learned the worst possible way, but I learned. But it doesn't change the past. Her voice came out small, broken. It doesn't change what happened to me. I know, Damon whispered, complete devastation taking over. I know, and I'd give anything to go back and do it differently. Heavy silence fell. Riley stared at him, eyes red and full of pain. Is that why you came back? To make me pay? The question hit him like a punch. What? No, Riley. I came back because I needed a job, she admitted, voice tired. And when I found out you were the owner now, I thought about leaving immediately. But then I saw how you treated people, how you'd changed the policies, how you were different from your father. And I thought, maybe he grew up. Maybe he learned. Tiny hope bloomed in Damon's chest. I did change, and you became the most important part of my life without me knowing the whole truth. And if you'd known from the beginning, Riley asked, if I'd told you on the first day, would you have hired me? Yes, no hesitation. And I would have begged for forgiveness every day since. I don't want your forgiveness out of pity, she protested. It's not pity. Damon closed the distance between them, completely vulnerable. You're the woman I love, Riley. The silence that followed was absolute. Riley froze, eyes wide. What? Broken whisper. I love you, Damon repeated, tears finally escaping. For 3 years I tried to win you over without knowing I was literally the last person in the world you could love. But I love you, completely, desperately. And the idea that I hurt you, even without knowing, kills me. Damon. Her voice came out strangled. I know I can't change the past, he continued, needing to say everything, but I can give you a future where you're protected, valued, loved more than anything. If you'll let me, if you can forgive me. Riley shook her head, tears continuous. You can't just... I know. He stepped back, giving her the space she needed. I'm not asking for an answer now. Just, please don't give up on me yet. Think, process, and when you decide, I'll accept it, whatever it is. He turned to leave, each step harder than the last. Damon, he stopped. Without turning. I need time, her voice small but firm. As much as you need, he promised. I'll be waiting. And he left, leaving Riley alone with the weight of revelation, of the past finally exposed, of a future completely uncertain. Chapter 6. Distance and Pain.
I should have protected you.
4 days, 4 complete days since the revelation, and Riley Bennett was becoming a master at evasion. Remote work when possible, arriving too early or too late to cross paths with Damon, communication strictly by email with one-line responses. She'd turned avoidance into an art form, and it was killing me. I sat at my desk at home for the 3rd consecutive morning, laptop open, coffee going cold beside me, and absolutely no ability to concentrate. Every time I tried to focus on spreadsheets, my brain betrayed me by going back to that moment. The shock on Damon's face, the raw pain in his voice, the tears that I'd never, in 3 years, seen in those eyes. I love you. The words echoed in my head on infinite loop, making it impossible to think about anything else. The phone rang, pulling me from the spiral of thoughts. Ivy, because of course it was Ivy. You can't avoid him forever, she said without even saying hello, because apparently conversational preliminaries were optional now. Yes, I can, I responded stubbornly, taking a sip of cold coffee and grimacing. I'm doing an excellent job of it so far. Riley, it's been 4 days. The man has sent you 17 messages, all polite, all respecting your space, and you haven't even opened any of them. I read the notifications. I defended weakly. That counts. It doesn't count, Ivy exploded, and I could imagine her dramatically rolling her eyes. You need to talk to him. For real, I'm not ready. The words came out small, too honest. Ivy's sigh was long and loaded with compassion. He loves you, Riley. He thinks he loves me, I corrected, shuffling random papers just to have something to do with my hands. But when the novelty wears off, stop! Ivy cut in firmly. Stop making excuses. He loves you. He declared it in front of you, crying, after finding out the worst possible thing. And even then he didn't back down. Tears burned unexpectedly. But the past, Ivy, how do I get over that? You remember that he was 25 years old? That his father was a controlling monster? That he literally had no power to change anything at that moment? Ivy's voice was gentle now, but firm. Riley, carrying that pain for 10 years was valid. Your anger was valid. But now you need to decide if you're going to let the past destroy your future. Heavy silence fell, because she was right. Damn her, but she was right. He completely changed the club after his father died. I continued in a low voice, admitting what I'd observed over the past 3 years. New policies, real protection for employees, fair processes. He learned. Exactly, Ivy practically shouted victoriously. He grew up. He became a different man, but the 17-year-old girl in me is still angry, I confessed, voice breaking. Still remembers being sent away like she didn't matter. I know, honey. Ivy softened completely, and that anger is valid. But Damon today isn't the 25-year-old boy who was controlled by his father. He's the man who spent 3 years trying to win you over respectfully, who changed everything at the club, who's destroyed right now because he hurt you without knowing. I covered my face with my free hand, breathing deeply against the tears. I don't know if I can forgive. Then find out, Ivy said simply, but find out by talking to him, not running away. Meanwhile, at the Obsidian, Damon Cross was having the worst days of his life, and considering he'd grown up in the Mafia and seen his brother die, that was saying a lot. Boss, you need to eat something. Marcus placed an unsolicited sandwich on his desk for the 3rd time that day. I'm not hungry. Damon responded automatically, eyes fixed on the computer where he was pretending to work, but really just staring at the blank screen. You haven't eaten properly in 4 days, Marcus pointed out, genuine concern in his voice. You look like a walking corpse. I feel like a walking corpse, Damon admitted, rubbing his tired face. So it seems appropriate. Marcus pulled up a chair, sitting heavily. She's still avoiding you. Completely. The word came out bitter. Remote work, one-line emails, doesn't even look at my messages. I ruined everything, Marcus. You didn't know. I should have known, Damon exploded, slamming his hand on the desk with frustration that had been building for days. I should have paid more attention, should have questioned my father, should have cared more about the people working here instead of just blindly following orders. You were 25 years old under the control of a controlling and abusive man, Marcus said firmly. You can't blame yourself for not having power you literally didn't possess. Damon laughed without humor. Try convincing Riley of that. She'll understand. She just needs time to process. What if she doesn't understand? The question that had kept him awake every night finally escaped. What if she decides she can't forgive? That I'm just a reminder of the worst moment of her life? Marcus had no answer for that. He just placed his hand on his friend's shoulder in silent solidarity. The soft knock on the door made them look up. Carla Hartford was there, fitted black dress, concerned expression that didn't reach her calculating eyes. Damon, I heard you're going through a difficult time, she said in a voice that probably intended to be sympathetic, but sounded opportunistic. I thought I'd see if you needed company. Marcus coughed, disguising laughter. Damon just stared at her with an empty expression. No, thank you, Carla. She approached anyway, ignoring the clear rejection. Sometimes talking helps. Maybe dinner, something to take your mind off. Carla, Damon cut her off, voice coming out colder than he intended. I only want one woman, and that woman isn't you. Will never be you. So please, stop trying. Her face turned red under the makeup. I heard she's avoiding you. Maybe it's a sign that I need to be patient and wait for her to process, he finished firmly. Now, if you don't have anything work-related, please leave. Carla left in contained fury, heels echoing through the hallway. Marcus whistled low. You're really gone for her. Completely. Damon agreed without hesitation. And if she never forgives me, I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I lost the only person I've ever truly loved, because of a mistake I made 10 years ago, when I was too young and stupid to know better. Friday afternoon, I finally returned to the office in person. I had a meeting that couldn't be remote, and as much as I wanted to keep hiding, professionalism eventually won over cowardice. I arrived late, hoping Damon would be in a meeting or busy, but as I passed by the hallway toward the conference room, I saw through the half-open door of his office, and I froze. Damon was sitting at his desk, head in his hands with a completely defeated posture. Even from afar, even through the glass, I could see the exhaustion, the weight, the absolute pain radiating from him. He looked destroyed, completely and totally destroyed. Marcus was saying something, but Damon just shook his head, voice too low for me to hear but body language screaming despair. Something squeezed painfully in my chest, because that wasn't the confident and controlled Mafia boss. It wasn't the arrogant man who flirted constantly. It was just a broken man, genuinely suffering because of me. He really cared. It wasn't a game or conquest. It was real, painfully real. Riley, I turned so fast I almost tripped. Marcus had come out of the office, finding me standing in the hallway like a stalker. Meeting, I managed to say, pointing vaguely toward the conference room. Marcus studied me with that look that saw too much. He's destroying himself inside, you know. I didn't respond, didn't trust my voice. I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty, Marcus continued gently, just that he really loves you. And he's terrified he lost you before he even really had you. I need to get to the meeting, I murmured, running away again because it was what I did best. But the image of Damon destroyed haunted me for the rest of the day, through the meeting, through work, through the drive back home, and when I was finally alone in the apartment, silence enveloping me, a single question echoed in my mind. What did I want more? Justice for the past, or a chance at a future? The 25-year-old Damon had failed me. That was an undeniable fact. But 35-year-old Damon had completely changed. He'd grown, and learned. He'd become a man who protected people instead of turning his back. And that man loved me, genuinely, deeply, desperately. The question was, could I let go of the past enough to give the future a chance? I looked at my phone, at the 17 unread messages from Damon, messages that probably apologized, explained, begged. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in 4 days clicked to open them. The first message was simple. Riley, I'm sorry for everything. The second, I'm not asking for forgiveness because I think I deserve it. I just want you to know how sorry I am. The third, you need space. I understand. I'll be here when you're ready, if you're ready. Tears flowed freely as I read each one. None of them pressured, none of them demanded. Just honesty, pain, regret, love. I held the phone against my chest, decision slowly forming. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to face the past and the future head on, together. But first, I needed to decide if I could really forgive, and that answer I was still searching for. Chapter 7, Forgiveness and New Beginnings.
I lost her.
I'm here now.
Monday morning, 6 days after the revelation, I was standing in front of the Obsidian building with the same feeling as when I was 17, about to enter for the first time. Fear, determination, and the absolute certainty that my life was about to change completely. The difference was that this time, I was choosing the change. I spent the entire weekend thinking, crying, remembering, and finally processing. I talked with Ivy for hours. I read and reread each of Damon's messages. I looked at the 17-year-old girl who had been treated unfairly, and at the 28-year-old woman who had the chance to choose the future instead of staying trapped in the past. And I chose. I entered the building, ignoring the curious looks from staff who had probably noticed the tension of the past week. I walked straight past my office, straight down the hallway, and stopped in front of Damon's office door. Through the glass, I saw him sitting at his desk, looking at documents, but clearly not processing anything. The shadows under his eyes were deeper than on Friday. The suit, always impeccable, was slightly wrinkled. He looked exactly like I felt, exhausted from carrying emotional weight too heavy. I knocked on the door before courage could abandon me. His head shot up so fast it probably caused whiplash. His eyes met mine through the glass, and the expression that crossed his face, hope mixed with absolute fear, almost made me cry right there. Come in. His voice came through the door, hoarse from disuse or emotion. I couldn't tell. I opened the door with hands that trembled only a little. I entered, closed it behind me, and then we just stared at each other, the weight of 10 years and 6 days hovering between us like a physical entity. We need to talk, I finally managed to say, voice coming out firmer than I felt. Damon stood up so fast the chair rolled backward, hitting the wall. Riley, let me talk first, I interrupted gently, raising my hand. Please, before I lose my courage. He closed his mouth immediately, nodding, hands gripping the edge of the desk so hard his knuckles turned white, waiting, clearly terrified of what I was going to say. I took a deep breath, gathering the words I'd mentally rehearsed hundreds of times over the weekend. I've carried anger for 10 years, pain, resentment, a sense of injustice, and all of that was valid. It was real. I paused, meeting his eyes. But it wasn't your fault. Not completely. Riley, he started, but I shook my head. Let me finish, I continued, needing to say everything before the words got lost. I spent the weekend remembering everything. Not just what happened to me, but what I've observed over the past 3 years. The changes you made to the club, how you treat employees, the policies you implemented. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You were young, only 25 years old, under the control of a man you were taught to obey without question. You didn't have the real power that I, in my pain, believed you had. It was still partly my fault. Damon tried to interrupt, but I moved closer, closing the distance between us. You were young, without real power. I understand that now, I said firmly, needing him to hear it. It took time. It took pain. It took having to look beyond the 17-year-old girl who was hurt. But I understand. That doesn't justify, he insisted, self-flagellation clear in his voice. It doesn't justify, but it explains, I corrected gently, and then forced out the next words, the most important ones. And the man you are now, he's different, completely different from the 25-year-old boy who followed his father's orders. You grew, changed, became someone I stopped, courage wavering at the crucial moment. Someone you what? Damon whispered, dangerous hope gleaming in his dark eyes. The tears I'd held back all week finally overflowed. Someone I can forgive, who I do forgive. The sound that escaped him was half laugh, half sob. Riley, I forgive you, Damon, I repeated, each word deliberate and meaningful, for not knowing better when you were 25, for having to learn the hard way, for not having the strength to confront your father when you should have. Shaky breath. And I love you too. The silence that followed was so absolute I could hear my own heart beating out of control. Damon stood completely still, as if he'd forgotten how to breathe, just staring at me with an expression of complete shock. You, what? He finally managed, voice breaking on the last word. I love you, I repeated, stronger now, more certain. I've probably loved you for longer than I want to admit. I fought against it for 3 years because because I was terrified, but I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to run anymore. And then Damon moved. He crossed the distance between us in 2 long strides, hands going to my face with desperate urgency, pulling me up as he leaned down, and our lips finally met. The kiss was everything 3 years of unresolved tension and 10 years of pain could create. Desperate, intense, almost violent in the need to be closer, to erase all distance, to prove this was real. His hands were in my hair, on my waist, everywhere at once, pulling me against him as if he was afraid I might disappear. My own hands clutched at his suit, fingers twisting the fabric, holding on to him with equal force. He kissed like he was dying and I was air, like he'd waited a lifetime for this moment. And maybe he had. Maybe we both had. When we finally pulled apart, both gasping, he kept his forehead pressed against mine, hands still holding my face like I was something precious and fragile that could break. "I love you," he whispered against my lips, voice hoarse and loaded with emotion. "God, Riley, I love you so much it hurts." "I know," I responded, because I knew that feeling. I'd lived with it for 3 years. "I feel the same way. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you," he promised, dark eyes burning with sincerity. "For everything, for my mistakes, for the pain I caused." I kissed him again, softer this time, silencing the self-flagellating words. When I pulled back, I held his face with my own hands. "Or you could just love me." The smile that lit up his face was so beautiful, so genuine and radiant. It took my breath away. "I can do both." "Then do it," I whispered, smiling too, finally, truly happy. He pulled me back, and this time the kiss was different, still intense, still full of need, but it also had promise. It had future. It had healing. When we eventually separated again, more from the need for oxygen than real desire, Damon guided me to the couch in the corner of the office. We sat together, my body automatically curving against his arm wrapping around me and pulling me closer. "I can't believe this is real," he murmured against my hair, lips pressing a soft kiss there. "I was so sure I'd lost you forever." "You almost did," I admitted honestly, tracing random patterns on his chest. "If you were a different man, if you hadn't changed the club, if you hadn't spent 3 years showing me who you really are, I wouldn't have been able to forgive. But you did," he said, wonder in his voice. "I did," I confirmed, "because you're more than your mistakes. You're more than your past. You're the man who grew from those mistakes, who learned, who changed." I looked up, meeting those eyes I loved. "And that man, I want to be with him, forever?" he asked, vulnerable in a way he rarely showed. "Let's start with today and see where it takes us," I responded, but I was smiling. "But yes, I'd very much like it to be forever." The kiss he gave me then was soft, reverent, a promise sealed without words. When we separated, we just sat together in comfortable silence. The weight I'd carried for days, weeks, years finally lifted. "Riley," Damon said after a long moment, thank you." His voice was thick with emotion. "For giving me a chance, for forgiving me, for loving me despite everything." I squeezed his hand, intertwining our fingers. "Thank you for waiting, for respecting my space, for becoming a man worth loving." We stayed like that, intertwined on the couch in his office while the morning sun painted patterns on the wall. And for the first time in 10 years, the past didn't hurt anymore. It was still there, still part of my story, but it no longer had power over me. I had chosen forgiveness. I had chosen love. I had chosen the future. And looking at Damon, seeing the absolute love in his eyes, I knew I'd made the right choice. Chapter 8. Together and Challenges.
Over my dead body.
"So, you two are dating now, officially?" Marcus was leaning against my office doorframe with that irritating smile that indicated he already knew the answer and just wanted to see me admit it out loud. It was Tuesday, 2 days after the kiss that changed everything, and apparently the entire club had decided privacy was an optional concept. "Maybe," I responded, trying to sound casual while organizing papers that definitely didn't need organizing. "Riley, I saw you two kissing in the hallway yesterday," he pointed out, amused. "Like a lot of kissing. There was grabbing involved." My face instantly turned red. "That was a private moment. In the main hallway, at 3 in the afternoon, in front of 4 employees and 1 client. Marcus counted on his fingers. "Very private." "We thought it was empty," I defended, remembering how Damon had cornered me against the hallway wall because he needed to kiss me immediately, and how I'd agreed too enthusiastically to check for witnesses. Clearly it wasn't. He laughed. "But seriously, it's good to see you two finally together. Boss is unbearably happy. Yesterday he was singing in the elevator." I blinked. "Damon sang? Off-key, but yes," Marcus confirmed solemnly. "It was traumatic for everyone present." I couldn't help the laugh. "Okay, I need to see that. Trust me. You don't." But he was smiling too. "Anyway, Julian's arriving for a meeting in 10 minutes. Boss wants you there." The mention of Julian, Damon's business rival and generally a professional pain in the neck, made my stomach tighten slightly. "Why me?" "Because you're his executive secretary, and because he basically doesn't function without you around now." Marcus offered a look that said, "Do you really need to ask?" Fair enough. The conference room was tense 10 minutes later. Julian Marks was a man in his mid-40s, expensive suit, arrogant little smile, and an irritating habit of looking at me like he was calculating my resale value. Damon, he greeted with false familiarity. And Riley Bennett. Executive secretary, correct? Correct, I responded professionally, ignoring how he said my full name with strange emphasis. Bennett, Julian repeated, as if testing the word. Familiar name. Very familiar, actually. Something cold ran down my spine. Damon visibly tensed beside me. Let's get to the point, Julian, he said, voice controlled but with underlying steel. You requested this meeting. Yes. Business. Julian leaned back, smile widening unpleasantly. But before we discuss contracts, I got curious about something. I was reviewing old Obsidian records. Basic due diligence, and I found an interesting file. My blood froze. No, he couldn't have. Employee terminated 10 years ago for misconduct with a VIP client. Julian continued, eyes fixed on me like a predator. Riley Bennett. Same person, correct? The silence that fell was absolute. I looked at Damon, who had become completely still, jaw locked so tight I could see the muscle pulsing. Careful with the next word that comes out of your mouth. Damon said low, dangerous. Oh, no offense. Julian raised his hands in false surrender. I just found it interesting, especially considering I heard rumors that you two are involved now. The smile became more malicious. I imagine certain clients, investors, maybe even the press would find this story fascinating. Club owner dating an employee who was fired for misconduct. I wonder what they'd think. The fury that crossed Damon's face was visceral. He stood up so abruptly the chair fell backward with a crash. Are you threatening me? I'm offering perspective, Julian corrected softly, but there was triumph in his eyes, and perhaps suggesting that certain contract terms could ensure this perspective remains private. Get out, Damon said, voice low and lethal. Now, before I do something we'll both regret. Damon, be reasonable. Get out! The shout echoed through the room, and even Julian had enough sense to look nervous. He stood up, adjusting his suit. Think about my offer. I'm sure you'll come to the right conclusion. He looked at me one last time. It was a pleasure, Miss Bennett. The door closed behind him. Silence. Then Damon turned to me, and the protective fury on his face was so intense that for a moment I could only stare. He's not going to use this against you, Damon promised, voice still trembling with anger. Over my dead body. Damon, no. He held my face with his hands. Riley, I'm not going to let anyone hurt you with this. Ever. Not again. Something warm bloomed in my chest. I know, but Julian wasn't the only problem, because of course he wasn't. Carla showed up at my office on Thursday with a snake's smile and perfume so strong I could practically see it. Riley, darling, she said too sweetly, I heard the most interesting rumors. Carla, I greeted without looking up from the documents. Need something? I just came to give some friendly advice. She sat down without invitation. Woman to woman. That made me look up. Advice. About Damon. She crossed her legs, studying her perfect nails. Men like him, they get bored, Today you're an exciting novelty, but tomorrow, she shrugged delicately, he'll be looking for the next challenge. Something in my expression must have changed, because she smiled wider. I'm not trying to hurt you, darling. Just being realistic. She continued, you're a secretary. He owns an empire. Do you really think it'll last? For a second, just one traitorous second, doubt tried to seep in. Then I remembered. The way Damon looked at me, the way he'd fought for me, the way he loved me, completely and desperately. I smiled, and it was genuine. I trust him, Carla. She blinked, surprised. What? I trust him, I repeated. Stronger, completely, and I know he loves me. So your attempt to plant doubt, it's not going to work. Her face turned red. You're going to regret. The only person with regrets here is you. Damon's voice cut in from the doorway, cold as ice. Riley, can we talk? Carla, I think you better go. Carla practically ran out. When we were alone, Damon pulled me into his arms. You heard? I asked against his chest. Enough. He kissed my hair. And you handled it perfectly. I trust you. I repeated what I'd said to Carla. I know. He held me tighter. And that means everything. Friday night, Damon called an extraordinary meeting with all the main partners and investors, including Julian. Boss, are you sure about this? Marcus asked nervously as I adjusted Damon's tie. Absolutely, Damon responded, taking my hand. Riley, you don't have to be here for this if you don't want to. I'm staying, I said firmly. Together, remember? The smile he gave me was full of love and pride. In the conference room, 20 powerful men and women waited, confusion evident. Julian was in the back, confident smile. Damon stood in front of everyone, my hand still in his. I made everyone come because there's something I need to clarify about Riley Bennett and our relationship. Murmurs ran through the room. Julian leaned forward, obvious satisfaction. 10 years ago, Riley worked here as a waitress. She was 17 years old. Damon began, voice clear and firm. She was harassed by a VIP client. She fought back, screamed, and was fired and blamed for misconduct because my father prioritized money over justice. Shocked silence. Julian stopped smiling. I was 25 years old. I had no real power yet, and I was too much of a coward to confront my father. He continued, brutal honesty. Riley was a victim, and I completely failed her. He looked at me, absolute love in his eyes. But now I protect her. Always. And anyone who tries to use her past against us, he looked directly at Julian, will find out exactly how far I'm willing to go for her. Damon, this is, Julian started, panic emerging. It's over, Julian, Damon cut in. You tried to blackmail me using her trauma. I'm terminating all business with you. Effective immediately. You can't. I can, and I just did, Damon said finally. Leave. Julian left, destroyed. The room exploded in murmurs. Damon turned to me, ignoring everyone else. Together, I smiled, tears of happiness in my eyes, always together. And when he kissed me there, in front of everyone, there was no shame, just love, protection, and the promise of a future built on truth. Finally, there was peace. Chapter 9. Forever.
Will you marry me?
Yes, I will.
6 months later, and I honestly still couldn't believe this was my life. I was in my office, which now had a plaque saying, Riley Bennett, executive partner, instead of just secretary, finishing reports before the weekend when Damon appeared in the doorway with that smile that meant he was planning something. Don't even think about it, I warned without even looking up. I have work to finish. It's Friday night, your birthday. He entered anyway, because boundaries were still suggestions to him. And you're going to work? I'm having dinner with Ivy later. She canceled, he informed cheerfully. I asked. She enthusiastically agreed. Something about finally, and it was about time. I looked up, highly suspicious of conspiracy. Damon Cross, what did you do? His smile became even more suspicious. Come with me and find out. 20 minutes later, I understood why the Obsidian parking lot was too empty for a Friday night, because the entire club was closed. Low lights, soft music playing, and absolutely no one but the two of us. You closed the club? I asked, incredulous. On a Friday night? Damon, the revenue can wait. He guided me through the main hall to the VIP area that had been transformed into something out of a dream. Candles everywhere, red roses, because he never gave up on flowers even after I'd donated millions of them, and a table set for two with food from my favorite Italian restaurant. This is, I had no words, literally had no words, for you, he said simply, pulling out my chair, because you deserve to be celebrated, always. Dinner was perfect. We talked, laughed, reminisced about the past 6 months of dating that had been chaotic, wonderful, and completely ours. But I noticed Damon was nervous. His hands trembled slightly when he held his glass, and he kept adjusting his tie like it was too tight. Are you okay? I asked when we finished dessert. You seem nervous. I am, he admitted, and then before I could process it, he was standing, and then, kneeling. My heart stopped completely. Riley Bennett, he began, voice trembling slightly but eyes steady on mine. You forgave me when I didn't deserve forgiveness. You loved me when I didn't expect to be loved. You made me want to be a better man, and then you helped me become that man. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring that took my breath away. Will you marry me? Tears were already flowing before I could stop them. You're sure? With all the past? Especially because of the past. He interrupted firmly, holding my hand. I want to give you a future, Riley. I want to wake up every day beside you. I want to build a life together. I want everything. Yes, the word came out in a happy sob. Yes, yes, yes. The smile that exploded on his face was so radiant, it lit up the entire hall. He slid the ring onto my finger, perfect fit, obviously, and then pulled me into a kiss that was promise, celebration, and pure joy mixed together. When we separated, both laughing and crying simultaneously, he whispered against my lips, "Lucky me." 1 year later, Obsidian partner, Mafia boss's wife, and still hasn't learned to arrive on time. Damon commented when I rushed into his office. Our office now, since we officially worked together. Supplier meeting ran long, I defended, throwing my purse on the chair and stealing his coffee because mine had gone cold. And you love my organized chaos. Unfortunately, yes, he agreed, pulling me in for a quick kiss. How did it go? Productive. We closed the contract, I responded, settling into his lap because privacy in our own office was a luxury we took advantage of. And you? Survived the morning without me? Barely, he admitted dramatically. I had to make my own decisions. It was horrible. I laughed, snuggling against his chest. Do you remember the first time you cornered me in this office? 3 years ago. I remember you admitting I was irresistible, he said smugly. I admitted you were arrogant, I corrected. Technical details. He kissed my hair. But yes, I remember. I remember being certain you'd eventually be mine. Arrogant, I repeated, but I was smiling. And you love me anyway, he pointed out. I sighed dramatically. Unfortunately, yes. Lucky me, Damon repeated, turning me to kiss me properly. And there, In the office where it had all started with flowers and flirting and 3 years of stubborn resistance, I realized I'd found exactly where I belonged. In the arms of the man who had pursued me patiently, loved me completely, and given me a future better than anything I could have imagined. 3 rules I'd sworn never to break. 3 years of resistance, and in the end, it was worth every second, because Damon Cross wasn't just my boss, my husband, my partner. He was my best friend, my love, my home, and I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world.